Hi, welcome back. Today I'm going to be showing you 3 different ways to make a hipster logo in Adobe Illustrator. If you learned something, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. Let's get started. Okay, here in Illustrator I have 3 stock images I'm going to be using for backgrounds for the logos. These aren't required, but you can use these if you want to make good mockups for your client because they look really nice behind a solid white logo, and that's what we're going to be making for all 3 of these. In order to get 3 different artboards here, you can go to your artboard tool here at the bottom left of your tools, and whenever you have like your starting one like this one, you can hold Alt on it and drag it down and make a copy of it. I did that across the way for these 3, and these are size 1920 by 1080 in pixels, so that they can fit to a screen or something. Okay, we're going to zoom in here with our selection tool on this one, and I want to dim down all 3 of these stock images here because they're a little bright. And since Illustrator doesn't really let you change the colors of images too well, we're going to take our rectangle tool and drag it over this, and it's going to be a solid black. We want that. We're going to go to our transparency options, change the type to multiply, and change the opacity to 50%. Since these 2 are a little bit more darker than our first one, I'm going to copy this over and have the same thing right over top of that. And it makes it a little too dark with 50%, so we're going to lower the opacity to 25% instead. We're going to copy this over and do the same thing for this one. This is going to be 25 as well. With those a little dimmer, we can now lock everything in place here. So select everything and hit Control 2, and that should give us some solid backgrounds for us to work on. To start with this one, I'm going to close our transparency, and I'm going to make a more formal looking logo for this. The way these hipster logos work is that they're basically badge-like, and you'll see these on packaging companies or clothing stores, and the designing process for hipster logos doesn't really require a lot of thought. So there are going to be a lot of logos that end up looking very similar to each other, and these are going to look pretty similar because they're just going to be using lines and very simple shapes as a base, and then you build your wording on top of that for your company name, and then it will be really simple and it'll end up looking really minimalistic, and it will look great for your client. So I'm going to show you 3 different styles here. This first one's going to be pretty formal. You'll see this on like a nature preserve, a hotel, or even a clothing store. I'm going to start by making a rectangle. We're going to change the fill to 0 and make our stroke white. I'm going to make the size of our stroke about 10. And we're going to go to our selection tool, grab the corner here, hold shift, and flip it 45 degrees so it's perfectly diamond shape like that. I'm going to use our alignment tools and center it up properly, and whatever like artboard you're working on, it will automatically align to the one that you're on, so you don't have to worry about it like going all the way to the middle of all your artboards. I'm going to hold Alt on this, copy it over, and just like kind of put it back in place. Hold Alt and Shift at the same time and drag one of the corners so that it expands evenly, and just have it set up to where there's just kind of a layered box here in diamond shape. That already looks really good. We're going to put some words on here now because this is all you really need for it. You just need a very simple shape base, and you can be really creative with this. I'm going to go down here and set our type to 200 font, highlight it, make it white, and we're going to set the font to Trajan Pro 3, to bold. Going to type out evergreen in all caps. You'll notice that when I make these 3, these are all going to be based on the image that I'm using. The reverse would happen for when you're working with a client because you'll want to make the logo first and then base the background off of whatever you're making for the logo, but this is just kind of the reverse so I can show you how good these look on the mockups if you theme it properly. So we have an evergreen forest here. We're going to make an evergreen logo. I'm going to center that up pretty well. Little tip for you guys that really helped me is that when you have your text box here, the text box acts as its own like space around the word. If you were to like center it up like this, then it bases it off the box here. See all the space in this box here? It's going to center the entire box instead of the word. So if I were to go up to type, which we're going to do later, and hit create outlines and then line it up again, see it moves. And so once you're done with using all your text in these logos, you're going to want to set them all to outline and center them up properly, otherwise your stuff's going to look off. So I'm going to undo that to make sure it's back the way it was so we can edit it if needed. Kind of eye it when we align it up here. I'm going to make another word here. I'm going to do wildlife, only capital W. I'm going to change it to white. Change the font size to 100 instead. And let's go with Nautilus Pompilius regular here. I'm going to use a little script font. I'm going to fit it like right below the word here. Okay, let's set our type to outlines here. These are now editable shapes. Let's center these up. I'm going to center this up horizontally only. We don't want this going to the center. We want it below our main word. Okay. Now highlight your boxes that you made. Go up to Object, Path, and Outline Stroke. So these are editable. I'm now going to make a rectangle going over our evergreen here. Center it up. And we're going to use this as a guide to delete the inner part of our diamond shape. Just highlight the rectangle you made and your squares. Go to Shape Builder, hold Alt, and just remove everything on the inside where the box is. And you've made a box going around your main word now, and it looks very nice. You can finish this one up by highlighting everything, hitting Ctrl G to group it, and it's done. Let's move on to the second one. This one I'm going to do a more casual looking logo. This one will be something you'd see on like a club or something, or maybe some type of leisurely establishment. I'm going to start by typing out the word stellar for the stars. I'm going to make this white and set the font to 200, and we're going to change the font type to, let's do milkshake. It's a great script font because some of these will allow you to highlight particular letters, and once you highlight, say like if I were to do the L here, I could change the what the letter looks like, because it gives you a bunch of different options to make like a swooping line off of the edge of your letter. I'm going to do it with the end here and put it on the R, and it looks really good at the end of your letters. Just going to put that off to the side for a moment, and we're going to make a large circle here. Do the same thing we do with the rectangle. We're going to remove the white fill and add a white stroke. Make that about 10. Center that up. Gotta move that off a little bit more. And I'm going to show you guys a really cool trick here. I'm going to take our pen tool, and off to the side here or something, I'm just going to make a straight little segment going down like that. You can hold shift if you want to make a straight line. Going to do this yet again. I'm going to set the stroke to 10 and make it white. Make it a little longer if you'd like. I'm going to make mine a little longer. Okay, Now you can take your segment here, line it up with the very middle of your circle here. If you have smart guides on, you should be able to see this purple line. I'll shorten it back up, doesn't look quite right. Okay, we're gonna make this just a little, make a little space in between the circle and your line segment. Go up to your rotating tool, and when you click on this, you'll notice on whatever you have selected, only select your line segment here, you'll notice this little red target showing up in the middle of your shape. If I were to double click on the rotate tool, we can hit preview, and your angle here can be changed, and it'll start rotating it based on this target. The target will show the center of your rotation, and we don't want it there. So I want to cancel that. With the rotating tool selected, I'm going to kind of move over to the middle of my big circle here and find the center of it. Once you have the center highlighted, that purple word will show up for center. Hold Alt and click right there in the center, and the rotating tool will show back up and a red target will show up here. The rotating center is now the center of our circle, and will now rotate around like a clock when we go to move it like this. See? I'm going to set that back to 0, and instead of actually having a 0, we're going to hit 5 degrees. We're going to just type in 5 and hit copy. This has now copied our line segment 5 degrees over, and you can now hit Control G, no, not Control G, Control D as in duck, and hit it multiple times or even hold the button down, and it'll rotate all the way around and make like a whole thing of segments going around your circle. Just do it until the lines have filled in every little space. Deselect that. Probably shrink this down just a little bit. You can hold Alt and Shift just to shrink it down like that. I'm going to take our word now. I'm going to increase the size of it. And I want to center it up by my eye here. If I were to align it like this in the center, then the word wouldn't be properly centered. So I'm going to try to eye it so that the S and the R are going off of the circle the same amount. But I don't have to do this too much quite yet, because I'm going to do one more thing to this word. I'm going to go up to Type, Create Outlines. And if you want to make this one solid shape with a script font, you'll notice that the letters kind of overlap here because these script fonts need to look like they're like in a cursive style. So in order to make this a solid shape, you can easily go up to your Pathfinder tool and hit Unite. And anything that overlaps in your selection will become one shape. Okay, now go up to Object, Transform, and hit Shear with your word selected. I'm going to change our axis to vertical. Make sure your preview's on, and make the shear angle go down to about, let's do -10. Hit OK. And now we can eye it to move it properly, because we've given it a nice little slope to work on here, and it looks very stylized. Change it to your liking, and deselect it, and take a good look at it. It looks really nice so far. Select your word again, make sure it's only the word selected. Go up to Object, Path, and Offset Path. This part's going to be a little tricky, so try to pay attention. You're going to hit Preview on Offset Path, and we basically made like a stroke going around our word here. But it's not quite a stroke, it's a solid shape that fills in fills in where the word is, but also expands out a bit. So there's a little space outward. I'm going to hit OK on this, and you've now created like a separate shape here, and your word's in there as well. What you want to do is, since you did this, your word and your like outline that you've made to it are one solid shape. You can hit Control Shift G to ungroup them. Now your word is separate here, but you've also separated the S from the rest of the word. So you can highlight the rest of your word here, highlight the S by holding Shift and clicking on it. Whoops. And then hit Control G on that to make it one solid word again. Now see, we have the shape here that's also separate. We'll fix that in a second. I'm gonna highlight that. Kind of hard to not select your word, so it's a little tricky. Go up to Pathfinder and hit Unite, since these are kind of overlapping. You only have to do a group for that. Gonna close our Pathfinder now. And see, that's one like separate thing. I'm gonna highlight everything now and hold Shift. Actually, no, go up to Object first. Go down to Path and then Outline Stroke. All these little segments in the circle we made were still vectors, so we wanted them to be solid shapes for what we're about to do. Yeah, highlight everything. Hold Shift and deselect the word on the inside so that the word's not selected. We're going to want to delete this blob that we made by going to our shape builder and pretty much deleting everything involving this shape. So anything you see on the inside here, just get rid of that. Make sure you get every little bit, because there are a lot of shapes that you've made because of this. Just keep holding Alt and get rid of all of it. If you have like really tiny little bits that are left from like these segments on the outside, then you can probably delete them. Like stuff like this, you might be able to just delete and it'll look fine if it's kind of eye-catching for there to be like a little speck there. But I'm going to leave that the way it is, and that looks really good because we've made a space around our word now, so it pops out from the base that we made. It's kind of like how we did with Evergreen over here. We made a space going around it to show where that box is. So I'm going to highlight everything, hit Control G, group it, and that's done. Let's move on to our last one. Our last one's going to be more outdoorsy, and it's going to be like a camping logo. You'll see, we want this to be a little bit more vintage looking, so there won't be really any shapes that go along with this. We're going to play along with how the words are placed only. I'm going to start by typing out the word vintage. Actually, no, not vintage, voyage. Getting my words mixed up here. Okay, we're going to go with Lee Gothic font. Regular. This will be a nice bold font for our camping logo. I'm going to set the font size to 200. Yep, it's 200. Okay, next we're going to kind of line this up properly in the center. Not all the way yet. We're going to deselect that. We're going to make a circle going around our shape here. I'm going to remove the fill and just add like a little bit of a stroke to it. It doesn't need to be much because we're not going to be using this as a shape. We're going to be using this as a guide for our words that we're about to make. Go up to your type tool, right click it, go to type on a path tool. Click anywhere on your circle and the default words, Lore Me Spoon, will show up on here automatically, and you can actually just type all the way around the shape that you've clicked on now. It's really, really cool. So we're going to change this to white and change our font size down to 100. I'm going to type out hiking and do a space, and I want to add like a little separator here between the words I'm about to type out. So I'm going to go down to my glyphs. And your glyph options can be found just like any of the other options in your view. So go search through that if you don't have any of these windows here. I'm going to select our glyphs here. I'm going to scroll down through all these letters in this font. I'm going to find this little period here, this like dot that can be used as a separator. I'm going to use that there. Do space, I'm going to type out camping. I'm going to just copy and paste this over. And let's type out fishing as well. Now, the way this works is that this isn't centered properly. So what I want to do is go to my selection tool. And when this shows up, you'll see that there are these little pegs going off of our circle. The way these pegs work is that these two next to each other show the beginning and the end of where the font will be on the circle, while this one that's alone down here is showing the halfway point. What we want to do, this can be a little tricky, we're going to hold on to our end point, move it around the circle all the way to the right side of our circle, grab the other one, if it lets you grab onto it, sometimes it won't. Sometimes it's a little nitpicky. Okay, grab that and hold it and bring it down to the left side. Okay, now next thing we're going to do is we're going to highlight the word, and we're going to go up to our paragraphing options and do align to center. This will make it so the font goes perfectly centered on the top of your circle, and we can now move on to our next step, which is adding some more words here. We're going to go to our type tool here, go to 1988, oops, go to type out 1988, make the fill white, and this will be like our establishment year here. We're going to hold Alt, copy it over on this side, do 2018, and leave that there for now. We're going to center that up in a minute. Last thing we're going to type at the bottom is British Columbia, because I don't know where this photo was taken, but it definitely looks like the British Columbia. Those mountains on the west side of Canada are very beautiful, and it looks just like that. And Canada will be a nice place to do some hiking and camping and stuff. So we're going to set that up like that. Set that to white. And we're going to change the type of font here to condensed regular instead. I'm going to also do that for the years here. Just so they're a little bit more squished and it looks more like a stamp, I guess. This is something you'd see on like a hat or printed onto like hiking gear and stuff. I'm going to adjust the sizes here a bit. I'm going to shrink that down. I'm going to keep the font at 100. Okay, I'm going to select everything. I'm going to go up to type, create outlines. Now I'm going to start lining things up properly. I'm going to line up to center. I'm going to line this up to the very middle. Line this up and move it a bit closer, maybe even shrink it down a bit. And in order to line up these two years, I'm going to move them a little bit closer to each other like this. Now, make sure these are both centered vertically. Now select both of them by holding Shift, hit Control G to group them, and now since they're one like group here, I'm going to line those up horizontally so that they're evenly spaced away from Voyage. Last little step here, I'm going to add like a little underline to this. I'm going to line it up at the very top left of our word here, and then line up with the top right. So it goes all the way across. I'm going to hold Shift, drag that down, and I've set it up to where those pink arrows on the right show up, so it's evenly spaced between the British Columbia and Voyage. Camping looks a little too big now, so I'm actually just going to shrink that down just a bit. Just so it's like a little bit of an arc going over. So yeah, it looks good. That we are done with this one, then we can hit Control-G to group it. Maybe increase the size of the whole thing so it looks a little better on this picture. And with that, we are done with everything. Thank you for watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you learned anything. Thank you.